This is the Recto-Verb 25 by Mesa, and it just might be the perfect tube amp. Well, almost. So I bought this Recto-Verb 25 several years ago, got it brand new, and it has been a fantastic amp for me. It's the only amp I have. It's really the only amp I feel like I need. It's a great amp. But as great as this amp is for me, it's not a perfect amp. In fact, there are definitely some things about this that might make it, not such a great amp for everyone. So let's check out the features and the crazy wide range of tones you can get out of this thing and find out if this amp would work for you as well as it does for me, or, maybe not so much. All right, let's get into it. So this is a 25 watt all tube amp, and it can be switched down to 10 watts. Uses 6 12AX7 preamp tubes and 2 EL84 power tubes. It has 2 foot switchable channels with 2 selectable modes on each of those channels. There's clean and pushed on channel 1, vintage and modern on channel 2. It has a very nice tube driven spring reverb, a high quality effects loop, and a bunch of other stuff going on. Now you can get some really nice Fendery clean tones out of this, and of course, yes, you can get that Dual Rectifier thing as well, and pretty much anything in between. All right, so it's time to start checking out some tones. We're gonna go through 10 different tones. I could come up with 100 if I wanted to, but we're gonna go 10 to show the versatility of this thing. Using my Fender Telecaster to start off. We'll also be using my Gibson Les Paul back there, switching back and forth. That way we're getting single coils and humbuckers. As far as how I'm recording all this, details are in the description down below. And let's go ahead and get started with all knobs at noon on the clean channel. Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about what makes this such a great amp, and then we'll dive into some areas where it might fall short for some people. Number one reason why I think this is a great amp is I get my dual rectifier fix. I've always wanted a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier ever since like the early 2000s, right? It's been a dream amp for a very long time because it's the sound of so much of the music that I've listened to and played over the years, but they've always just been way too expensive, way too loud, too big, and all that stuff for my purposes. They just haven't been practical for me at all. Then several years ago, I discovered the Recto-Verb 25, and honestly, I feel like this amp may be even a better fit for me than a dual rectifier. It still gives me that sound that's really pretty close to a dual rectifier. It's a lot smaller. It's not stupid loud, though it's not quiet either. It's quite a bit cheaper than a dual rectifier, and I guess it's probably a lot more versatile than a dual rectifier as well. So I get my dual rectifier fix with a bunch of extra bonuses thrown in. All right, number two reason why I think this is a great amp is versatility. Now, I know I'm a bit different than a lot of people out there, or at least a lot of people on YouTube, and that I only have one amp at any given time. I don't have a wall full of amps or a closet full of amps or a storage unit full of amps. I have one amp. So I like to have an amp that can cover a lot of ground, a lot of genres and all that kind of stuff. And I really think that this one does it well. I feel like I could take this Recto-Verb 25 to pretty much any band practice or gig situation. I could be doing country, southern rock, pop, hard rock, pop punk, whatever, pretty much anything, and I could find a tone and dial something in and I'd be just fine. Also along those lines, I can record almost anything I want with it, especially like how I did with these demos on here where I pair an appropriate speaker and speaker cab with the sound I'm going for, kind of transforms the amp, adds to that versatility and all that stuff, and it's just a great way of recording. So it's a great sounding amp all the way from those cleans to the high gain stuff and pretty much anything in between. Number three reason why I really like this amp is that it's 25 watts. 25 watts seems to be like a really good wattage for me. I know wattage doesn't translate directly to loudness and stuff like that, but this is definitely loud enough that I can take it with my 1x12 cab and go to a band rehearsal or a lot of live situations and I'll be just fine. I'm sure if you plugged it into a 4x12 it would be amazing, but it would be like probably crazy loud, but my 1x12 handles it just fine. I'm also able to get it quiet enough at home to play and practice there. So it works really well in both situations, live and at home as well. Number four, it has two independent channels. So I really like that this has two channels with fully independent tone shaping. So each channel has its own EQ. It's even got its own spring reverb knob, separate gain knobs, all that. That allows me to dial in exactly what I want. And if I want to treat it as a clean pedal platform amp like you would like a Fender or something like that, and just use the channel one with overdrive pedals and stuff, I can. It actually works really great for that. But when I want to switch between those two channels and dial those tones in, I have full flexibility there as well. All right, number five reason why this is a great amp is that it's a traditional all analog tube amp. Now, this amp doesn't have any digital effects. There's no delays, digital reverbs, or flangers, or anything like that built into it. And I really like having to let the tubes warm up. I like dialing in tones by actually using real tone knobs. And I like having a real spring reverb tank and it goes clang and all that kind of stuff, right? There's just something about all of that. Let's talk about some honorable mentions, some nice things about the amp that didn't quite make the list. It does have that 10 watt option. That is nice to have. I don't really use it that much though. It doesn't drop the volume of the amp very much, just a little bit. You kind of tell that in the demo, but it does more of a tone shaping, especially on the attack and stuff like that. It's nice to have, but I don't use it that much. Also, the effects loop, it works really well. It doesn't affect the tone, doesn't do anything weird. Just plug my pedals in and it kind of just works like you would expect it to. And of course, I think this is a great looking amp as well. It's got that classier kind of grown up look while still pulling in some of those dual rectifier aesthetics. So it's perfect for someone like me, dad rock, a little bit grown up, but a little bit of punk rock still happening there, all that kind of stuff. So I just think it's a great looking amp. Okay, so where does this amp fall short for some people? Well, some of the reasons that I think it's a great amp are some reasons why others may not like it. Number one, versatility. Now again, while I think this is a great amp that can cover a lot of genres, if you're looking for a very specific sound, this may not do it for you. For example, I feel like this can cover a lot of great classic rock tones if I need to, right? But if you're looking for a Marshall plexi tone or a cranked AC30 kind of tone, you're probably gonna be a bit disappointed with this. It'll cover genres well, I feel, but it won't exactly reproduce the sound of a bunch of other specific amps, like, you know, maybe like a modeler is trying to do. So you'll probably need to get a modeler or just get that amp that is designed to do that sound. Number two, it's 25 watts. Again, this is a great wattage for me. This is something that I like about it, but it does seem to be a pretty loud 25 watts, especially in modern mode. It gets loud quick. So that's great for live settings and jamming and all that kind of stuff, but for playing at home, that may not be so great. Now, I did say that I play my amp at home all the time, and it's a great wattage for that for me, but keep in mind that I live in a house and there's a little bit of distance between the houses in our neighborhood. I have a separate room where I can play at a decent volume and I'm not really bothering the rest of the family too much or my neighbors. Also, I have a reactive load box. My Two Notes Torpedo Captor allows me to plug my amp into that, and then I can run through my computer, use cab sims like I did for my demos here, and I can wear headphones or record silently if I want to. But if you're looking for a practice tube amp to play at conversation levels, you know, family room or at home, this is probably not going to be a great amp for that, generally speaking. If you live in an apartment or you have roommates that don't particularly like hearing guitar sounds all day long, you're probably going to find that it's too loud for a lot of those situations as well. Okay, the number three reason why this may not be a great amp for some people is that it can be a bit tricky to dial in a tone. Some amps out there, and I've had a couple, they're really straightforward, they're really easy to dial in a great tone. They kind of do their thing, you just kind of just tweak a little bit and it just sounds amazing right out of the box, right? That's not always the case with this amp. The EQ, the gains, the master knobs, and you know, they're all very interactive. Changing one can kind of change how another one responds. They all behave a little bit differently depending on the mode you're using. If you read through the manuals, like if you're on this mode, it kind of does this thing, but if you switch to this mode, then it kind of does this thing, you know? So there's definitely a bit of a learning curve with this amp. I've had this amp for several years and I feel like sometimes I'm still trying to learn it. So I enjoy the challenge and the discovery of, you know, turning knobs and finding tones and all that kind of stuff, but I could definitely see where this might be frustrating for some people who just like to plug in, crank it up, and have a great tone straight out of the box. All right, number four reason why this may not be a great amp for some people is that it's a traditional tube amp. Again, that's one of the things I liked about it, but the Recto-Verb 25 was released quite a while ago, I believe in 2013. So that's, you know, 11-ish years as the filming of this video. Since then, there's been a lot of technology and stuff that has been added to tube amps, and this doesn't have any of that. A lot of these technologies kind of come from the conveniences of those amp modelers and those digital amps and all that kind of stuff, and they're incorporating some of those things into actual tube amps. So one of them I think of is the Rev G50. I haven't played one, but I've, you know, seen some stuff online and looked at it a little bit. It has a Two Notes reactive load box built into it. I have a separate one, but this has one built into it, and I think you can actually store up to like 128 cab sims right on it, you know, for playing live or silent recording. It's got XLRs that come out in stereo. You can go straight to front of house if you want to, or go straight into your audio recording interface. So very cool there. It has MIDI, so you can use a MIDI foot switch controller and control different parameters and stuff on your amp. It's got a headphone jack, so you can just plug headphones straight into the amp and practice at night or during the middle of the day or whatever. It's got some other modern features as well. And there's even a couple of Mesa Boogie amps that started incorporating some of these things as well. But again, this one's released before all that stuff came along, so it's just a good old straight up, nice, hot tube analog amp without any of these modern digital features. Number five reason why this may not be a great amp for some people is that it's just not cheap. Now, tube amps in general are really pretty expensive these days, and this one's no exception. You can definitely find some more affordable tube amps out there if, you know, this isn't a good one for you. Now, I did get mine several years ago when those prices started to jump up. I saw it jump once and I was like, uh-oh, I better get in on this before it keeps jumping up, because we all know these things don't tend to come back down in price, right? And that's exactly what's happened. It's just kind of kept steadily going up over the last several years. Now you can find some good deals on used ones every now and then, but if I were looking to buy a brand new one today, I'd find it kind of hard at the prices that they're at right now. I'm not sure I could do it. I'd really have to think about it. As much as I love this amp, it's not cheap. And one honorable mention I want to throw in here is back to the aesthetics and stuff. It has those really cool looking dual rectifier knobs, but the problem with those is they are really hard to see where your settings are a lot of times. They're that chrome metal and they got just a little indentation, you know, where your setting is, and that can be really hard to see, especially in weird lighting situations and stuff like that. So I've even thought about swapping those out, especially if I were gonna be playing with this live a lot. I would definitely wanna put on some like chicken head knobs. It'd be a whole lot easier to see. All right, so what'd you think of the amp? Let me know in the comments down below. What did you like or not like about it? Do you think this would be a good amp for you or not so much? Also, make sure you check out this video right here. It's the first video in a series of how I record my songs. So if you want to see how I record my songs, click that one right there. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing because I know you did. And I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.